On 8th of April at Carlisle Business Centre, Bradford West Hustings took place, and Sunrise Radio was there to record the proceedings. To be able to broadcast the events from that evening and to make it fit for broadcast, you will now hear the edited version over the next 3 hours. Gaps of silence as well as some heated moments have been edited out. Thank you to Just West Yorkshire and Asian Sunday for organising the event. The PPCs in attendance were Harry Boota, UKIP, Naz Shah, Labour, George Grant, Conservative, George Galloway, Respect, Celia Dean, Green Party, and Alun Griffiths, LibDems. For those listening and on social media, please use the hashtag Sunrise Radio and hashtag Bradford West. For those that have not registered to vote yet, please do register online at www.gov.uk/register-to-vote.
We've asked each of the PPC to provide an opening statement of 3 minutes, and I'll be timing this very strictly. I'll give you 30 seconds before your 3 minutes is due, and then you will stop. And what we will do is we'll start with Mr. Harry Boota from UKIP.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello, assalamu alaikum. I think a lot of you were thinking that, who is this Harry? And when I say to you that I am Bradfordian, and you will say, well, how? So the next 2 or 3 minutes, I want to tell you exactly who I am and where I came from. I came to Bradford in 1967 as an 11-year-old with my father, and I settled in Thornbury. I educated myself here in Bradford, went to Fairfax Grammar School, and in 1973, I joined the Royal Navy. So prior to joining the Royal Navy in 1973, I was Mohammed Boota, and the Harry bit came having joined the Navy. They all like to have a nickname for something, and everything else that went with it, and then somebody said Harry, and here I am. So that's where Harry Boota comes from. My journeys have taken me around the world, and also I was in the 1982 Falklands War as well, so I'm a veteran of the Falklands War and the Gulf Wars. I've settled down south for the last 20 years. Been a member of the United Kingdom Independence Party for the last 2 years, which I have really, really connected with. It is a party that I wholeheartedly believe in and believe in the policies. You will hear around me, I've been around Bradford, and the first thing I hear about UKIP is, the first word anybody says is racist. And I would like to make it clear to everybody here, if this party was the slightest bit racist, I would not be a member of it. So let's get this straight first. There are racists. You may laugh, but let's hear me out. Hear me out. You will find that there are more racists in the other parties, but they are muffled racist, right? We have the odd one that puts his head up above the parapet and says, I'm a racist, and we say, well, thank you very much for letting us know. Off you go. Okay? So we, in relation to the other parties, are the least racist of all. Okay, so well, if you don't believe me, right, you will.
30 seconds.
And I will make you the next 4 weeks. Come and talk to me. Let's talk about it, and let's clear this air and have a political party that means Britain for British people, for us, for our children, and that's me. Right now, I'm going to fight for it, for you, for us in Bradford, to achieve what our aim is, which is good education and good health service here. I will be fighting.
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I was going to talk about our absentee MP, but he's here. And I remember it's election time. Okay. Bradford deserves better. I believe Bradford West needs a Labour government and a Labour MP. Let's be clear about a few things for Bradford West. This government has been a complete disaster for the school kids in Bradford. They have taken the money out of where we needed it the most and spent it on free schools. Not only that, It is also worth pointing out that Labour did in fact put forward a motion for an alteration of school funding so that we could target the funds where we needed them the most. But our absentee MP wasn't there to cast his vote on that one. For children and families, we need a Labour government because we are committed to increasing childcare from 15 to 25 hours, capping class sizes for 5, 6 and 7-year-olds, abolishing the free school status. Bradford deserves better. We need a Labour government for families because under the coalition, every family is worse off by approximately £1,100. We are committed to increasing the minimum wage over the next term of Parliament to £8, freezing energy bills, and we will be doubling paternity leave. We need a Labour government because the average weekly take-home pay in Bradford is approximately £360, in comparison to anywhere else where it's over £500 a week. Bradford deserves better. We have a coalition government which has failed miserably in reducing the deficit as promised. I can tell you, if this was a football match, my 3-year-old would hit the back of that net better than the coalition government. The only table Bradford West has gone up in since the coalition is the unemployment table. What we will do, if we come into power, the Labour government will put £9 billion through the LEPs, through the LEPs, to actually devolve what we have at central government. And that £6 billion will actually come so we can make the decisions of where we need to invest it the most. So nobody in London is telling us how we need to grow our community, our businesses.
30 seconds.
99% of businesses are small businesses. We will, for every one corporation tax cut that the Tories are offering, 17 small businesses will flourish. That's where we need to put our investment, in our communities, to create growth. Over the last 3 years, Bradford West has been badly served. We have an absentee MP, and for me, the role of the MP in Bradford West is about being our voice in Parliament. But he's never there, as he's too busy earning loads elsewhere.
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, everyone, for coming along. I will address some of Naz's points later this evening. But I want to start my remarks, a rather unorthodox fashion, by telling you a story. And it concerns my younger sister. 2 years ago, she was involved in a terrible accident in Greece. She fractured her neck, she punctured her lung. By God's grace, she survived. The doctors who treated her there did the best they could, but the hospital in which she was treated told quite a different story. There was no soap. My parents who went there had to buy soap at this hospital. There was no drinking water. They had to buy bottled water. The sheets were dirty. They hadn't been changed. What was happening was a health service in a state of slow-motion implosion, because the Greek economy was in a state of slow-motion implosion. There are many parties that will tell you they are the guardians of the NHS, but I will tell you the party that is the guardian of the NHS. It is the party that is the guardian of the economy, because without a strong economy, be under no illusions, you have no world-class health service, you have no education system worthy of the name, you have no social services. Now, I think we have a positive story to tell on the economy over the past 5 years. We've created more jobs in this country than in the rest of Europe put together. Here in Yorkshire, more jobs than in all of France. And contrary to Naz's claim, in Bradford, unemployment has fallen by 30% in the past 12 months alone. But it is undeniable that we are starting from a painfully low base. Unemployment in this city of Bradford West stands at almost 3 times the national average. The number of business units as a proportion of the population is barely half the national average. And worst of all, the number of people eligible who are claiming working or child tax credits stands at 63.5% of the population, far above any other constituency in this country. So it is quite clear to me that something is going very, very wrong with local management somewhere. Now, I want to talk about some of the positive things we can do to address this later this evening, and indeed some of the things we are doing. But finally, before I close, I do want to turn on to one other issue, which is this point of community relations. If I were elected in May,
30 seconds.
and I could make a positive contribution to trust, respect and understanding between our communities, I think I could look back on my life and say I had achieved something positive. We have a problem with extremism and nobody can deny it. But I can't help but feeling that at the root of it all is a sense of disenfranchisement and powerlessness. This constant demonisation in the press, casual racism, lazy
Your 3 minutes
thinking.
are up. Thank you.
And that I want to bring an end to. It is something that I will focus on more than any other.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Well, those personal attacks on me those personal attacks on me, Ms. Shah, cannot possibly be true, can they? Because on the 22nd of February at 1 p.m., you called us and asked us if you could be the Respect candidate in Bradford East. And before you make a bigger fool of yourself, I really advise you not to deny it. 22nd of February was the day after you came bottom of the poll with just 13 votes out of almost 220 in the Bradford West Labour Party selection. You were a big loser then, and the kind of way that you have embarked upon this campaign has already ensured you're going to be a big loser again. You have only a passing acquaintance with the truth. You claimed, and gullible journalists believed you, that you were subject to a forced marriage at the age of 15. But you were not 15. You were 16 and a half. I have your nikah. I have your nikah in my pocket. In my pocket.
Can Galloway, Mr. Galloway,
you told that story.
Mr. Galloway, can I have your forbearance, please? I am the chair. I will take this. Naz, I will take this. Naz, I will take. Oh, I will call an end to these proceedings. I will. No, I do not want to hear. I will take this. All right? We talked about issues. So, Mr. Galloway, can we please stick to the issues, because you've made your point, you made those two issues. No. Can we now move on to issues, please?
You allowed 3 personal attacks on me by my new Labour opponent.
Mr. Galloway, I was going to come back to that. Mr. Galloway, I was going to come back to that. Can I please ask emotions to just come down for a while? And I think, Mr. Galloway, will you continue, please?
I will continue. No one will ever stop me from speaking. The issue is that my opponent is a liar. She lied about me. She lied about her age. She slandered this community for her own selfish ends. She played into every stereotype.
We have got 15 seconds before you finish.
Well, are you sure? Have you given me injury time for your
All right.
interruptions?
No, it is actually. It's 3:10 now. I'm giving you another 20 seconds. Can we please? I need to keep time.
I have set politics alight in Bradford. That's why the media are here. We turned Bradford politics upside down. We've shaken the complacency of Labour, which is why they hate us so much. They have betrayed the people here in Bradford and elsewhere in the country. We are the real Labour Party, and that's why they hate us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Galloway. I would like to remind all PPCs, please, that we are here to discuss issues. There will be things that are personal that have come up. As long as they pertain to Bradford West, we will raise them, okay? But I do not need the audience to kind of inflame what we have got right now. So please let me do my job and you listen to what you need to listen to. Thank you.
Good evening. I stand here as your Green Party candidate and possibly the rank outsider in this six-horse race. However, when people are given policies without party associations, it is the policies of the Green Party that repeatedly shown to resonate with the electorate. We are the only anti-austerity party. Britain is the 6th richest society in the world, but we currently have levels of deprivation that have not been seen since the Victorian era, with food banks seeing a threefold increase in families taking emergency food parcels last year, with Bradford being particularly hard hit. We have an economy that puts growth in company profits before the well-being of society. And this has seen money concentrated in the hands of a wealthy few, leaving the rest of us to suffer at the hands of the coalition's ideologically driven austerity agenda. The Green Party believes there is a positive alternative to this mix of one-sided growth and austerity, an economy that works for everyone. We will end austerity and restore the public sector and create over 500,000 good jobs that pay at least the living wage. We will end workfare and benefit sanctions and make social security truly secure. The Green Party doesn't believe that the public's health should ever be up for auction. That's why we're completely opposed to the Westminster Party's policies of introducing market forces and competition into our beloved NHS. We will fight for a publicly funded, publicly provided health service, free at the point of use, and we will end creeping privatisation. We want every young person to have access to quality education, no matter what their family's income. And that's why we're opposed to the privatisation and commercialisation of schools, colleges and universities. We will scrap university tuition fees and bring back the EMA for 16 to 17-year-olds. We believe that public transport should be run in the interest of passengers and not to make profits for shareholders. And that's why we will return the railways to public hands. We will provide well-run, fuel-efficient, locally based transport systems that reduce our carbon emissions and provide fairly priced services, helping people to use their cars less, providing more sustainable transport, like cycling and walking. Many years of underinvestment in housing has resulted in a housing crisis that blights the lives of many. We will invest in new social housing developments with zero carbon standards
30 seconds.
and bring empty homes back into use to ensure everyone has access to affordable places to live. We will invest in insulation and microgeneration schemes to help households out of fuel poverty and create jobs. As a proud Bradfordian, I want to see our city become less of a suburb of Leeds and realise its true potential. We have a great spirit of entrepreneurialism and a pride in our ability to work, live and play in communities at the homes of families speaking 140 different languages.
Thank you.
We have well-beating curries, beautiful countryside.
Last sentence, please.
And a growing, vibrant young population and a hopeful future.
It's hardly worth walking over all this way because I don't intend to take the full 3 minutes up. I think it's far more important I talk about the things you want to ask, the questions you want to ask, rather than what I just want to say. I will beg the Chair's indulgence and be a little personal for a moment and just tell you who I am. I'm a general practitioner who's lived and worked in Bradford West for the last nearly 31 years now. And it's a privilege to be able to stand as a parliamentary candidate in Bradford West. It's particularly pleasing to see so many people here, and we can take a view as to why there's such a lot of interest in this fight, but I've been parliamentary candidate twice before, and I've never been to such a vibrant, such an exciting, and what I'm sure is going to be such an interesting hustings. About little under 5 years ago, the Liberal Democrats made a very difficult decision. It was, you will recall, a time of incredible difficulties in the economics of the country, and we needed a stable government. We need a stable government to try and turn the economy around. It was a difficult decision we made to go into coalition with the Conservatives, but I believe it was the right decision to do that. And frankly, even if I had to make that decision again today, knowing what I know now, I think it would still have been the right decision to do that. It has been a difficult few years. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We've had a very deep and difficult recession, but at last things are starting to turn around. Employment is rising, unemployment is falling. People are starting to see the benefits. Households are starting to to become better off, and we want to continue that. We want to continue. We have a strong economy because, as has been pointed out, without a strong economy, you can't do the things you want to do. But it has to be in a fair society. You can't run a strong economy on the basis of the poorest suffering most. And we want to have fairness. We want to continue the work we've done with bringing people, lower-paid people, out of tax. So I'll stop at this point. So we've got more time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think as chair, I have to seek a clarification from Naz Shah in terms of what Mr. Galloway just said, because this is material to the issue at hand. Mr. Galloway said that on the 22nd of February at 1 p.m, Naz, that you approached the Respect Party to join them as a Respect candidate. Could you actually clarify if this was the case?
Could Mr. Galloway also confirm, 5 minutes after I left the property, could he confirm that I actually said to the guy that I've actually just made a joke? Could he confirm that, please? Could he please? Could he also confirm...
I don't want anyone...
I joked about it, Ratner. Please, I've got a whole WhatsApp conversation to prove it.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the person down there. So I think we deserve to listen to the response. So no interference, please.
Could Mr. Galloway also confirm whether or not, in terms of my lies, whether or not somebody, after going through 2 weeks of evidence, somebody went to Pakistan, did somebody pose as my father, who died over 12 years ago, to get my nikah nama from the office? Could he also confirm whether he has sight of the original one, which I have left in my office, which is dated the 25th of December 1988. Of course not, because he doesn't have sight of it. Because it was my marriage, not his.
Okay, fine. We've had a response here. Mr. Galloway, there are 2 points that Naz has raised. That she said, A, it was a joke, and secondly, that, somebody went there pretending to be her father. So, Mr. Galloway, will you please address those 2 issues, please?
I think you can take that from Naz Shah as an admission that she called us not once, but twice to ask if she could be the Respect candidate in Bradford East the day after she came bottom of the poll in the Labour selection for Bradford West. She may claim it was a joke. She didn't say it was a joke. And I warn her not to go further down the route of denial. I haven't been in Pakistan for a very long time. I did not myself procure this nikah. But she's just told us she has an earlier nikah, but she left it in her office. Well, here I ask, let her produce the nikah from her office. Because if she's either the only...
What's my nikah got to do with Bradford West?
Because
Please,
you're a liar.
Get over yourself.
It has...
Get over yourself, George. What have your 4 weddings got to do with
Do you
Bradford
both
West?
want to have a free-for-all, or are we going to be adults in this? Naz, you raised an issue. Hang on, I will come to you. I sought a clarification. You will have the right to respond. And after Naz has the right to respond, we will go on to the debate proper. I'm not taking any more questions, because this is about Bradford voters, and there are loads of issues that people want to address. So,
with respect, Ratna, you should have stopped Naz Shah when she began her personal attacks. Then,
Mr. Galloway, please leave me to make my judgments. Would you please answer the question? Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure what question there is for me to
answer. Have you said enough?
No. Naz asks what this has to do with Bradford West. It has this to do with Bradford West. There are enough liars in the House of Commons already without electing another liar to the House of Commons. That's the point.
Thank you. Naz, I will give you the last right of reply, and I expect us to actually observe decorum. We are not going to be shouting and screaming at each other over the chair. I will not allow it. So, a short response to what Mr. Galloway just said.
unlike Mr. Galloway, I am not going to go down the route, whilst I've got an election campaign to run, of suing Mr. Galloway. I'll do that after the election. And I will be doing that. So as far as I'm concerned,
Fine.
I refute entirely that I have lied about the age of my wedding.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. We will now go to the debate proper, okay? I'm drawing a line under this, and I'm not coming back to this again. So, Amin, would you please stand up and ask us your first question?
My question is to all the panel. Has the dominance of blathery or clan politics led to the corruption of local democracy? And if so, how?
Thank you. Can I start with you, Alun?
There's no surprise, I think, in people wanting to group together on the basis for mutual support and to help one another out. And that's what political parties are about. It's been the way things have worked all over for many, many years. I think where people sometimes find it difficult is where the decisions about who you support and who you work with are made on things other than the traditional ideologies that we're used to. Effectively, it is exactly what we've been saying. It becomes about personalities and not about issues. And that is very difficult. This is for me, who doesn't come from background. This is very difficult for me to understand that, because I'm very much used to the fact that it's about issue politics. It's about what are you like? Are you on the left? Or are you on the right? Do you want more spending on the health service? Do you want tax cuts or not? And it's very difficult when the decisions about support and it's about groupings are made on the basis of personalities and so on. So it becomes difficult. And my gut feeling as somebody looking from outside is that cannot be healthy if what you want is to actually debate issues and to sort out the decisions about the important things that that we need to make the decisions about how we run our society, how we run our city.
I would agree with Alan in that, as a white woman sat here talking about Bradford, it's quite difficult. I'm of the opinion that everybody should be able to vote as they see fit, vote freely, and be proud of their vote and feel confident that actually they can make a difference in their communities. So it should be issues-based, not based around personality.
Harry, could I ask you to take the answer, please?
For people that don't know what brotherhood is, it's like a brotherhood, in a sense. That's what it says on the internet, as a brotherhood, as a brotherhood on the internet, right? But they can't translate it into anything else because it's a difficult thing to translate into by Wikipedia. Only we can tell you what brotherhood is in its true essence, right?
Right, Harry, we need to move on.
I think Wiki can't tell you that. Right, it does bring politics down, the brotherhood system. I think having something that should have been left behind, transported here to the UK, is not good for politics for us. I think you should elect politicians on their ability to deliver local issues, that what we're here for, what we stand for, and not get them to elect regardless of who they are, what they are, whether they're capable of or not. Okay, and I think it's a bad idea to use the system as it's been used. Let's bring politics back, have brotherhoods, but please start using it in a sense where it's true democracy and not the democracy that we've imported, if you like.
Naz?
I agree with the panellists in terms of brotherhood is okay, in terms of as long as it brings true democracy. What I have to say on the subject is this. As far as I'm concerned, the campaign that is being run in Bradford West will be inclusive of everybody, regardless of race, gender and ethnicity, and it will bring about the real change that is needed in Bradford West.
Thank you, Ratna. Can I just say, before I go any further, that I think any hopes you might have had that this debate, at least in how it's written up in the media, would be based on issues and not personalities, has just been definitively thwarted by the events of the last 15 minutes. And that is a crying shame. Because I think this city and this constituency deserves better than that, quite frankly.
George, can I say that
1
we're
week
in the
ago-
early hours of this debate,
Yes, I
and we won't be
appreciate that.
descending further.
I will continue then on this issue. I think when Biradri first came about in the 1960s and 70s, when people first came to these shores, I can entirely understand why it existed. People not speaking the language properly, maybe not being able to read that well, not knowing how to fill in forms and so on and so forth. To have people who were able to help in that sense was clearly something that was worthwhile, and so this concept of the community leader is born. My concern, and I think it's borne out by some of the things that have happened in this constituency in the past few weeks, is that since that time it has metamorphosed into a vast system of patronage, and often corrupt patronage. And the only thing I would say in the terms of how we can get over this is each person in this constituency now has one vote. No matter how rich, no matter how poor, you have your own vote. And the Biradri can only work if the block stays together. But if each of the little bricks that make up that block make up their own mind, based on the issues as they see them, then the system is by definition broken. So I would urge all people to cast their vote on that basis, based on who you think can most represent you and earn your trust, and not on the basis of what somebody else has told you to do.
Thank you, George. Mr. Galloway.
All kinds of brotherhoods. George is a member of the Toffs Brotherhood, the Bullingdon Brotherhood. He's a member of the Henry Jackson Society. That's another kind of brotherhood. There are all kinds. Well, I can assure you there's no libel in that. He's open about that. But he's hoping not many people in Bradford West know who the Henry Jackson Society are. But they will, George, they will. There are all kinds of brotherhoods. Freemasons are a brotherhood. The Union of Catholic Mothers is a sisterhood. There's no reason to single out the Pakistanis, the Kashmiris, the Muslims, for special opprobrium about having brotherhoods. However, where that would be a mistake is amply demonstrated by what happened here 3 years ago in the by-election. Labour chose a candidate based on Biradari politics, and we gave them a bloody good hiding. And that proves that this problem does not exist to the same extent as some people claim that it does. However, if there's one place in the whole city where Braddaryism continues to dominate, it's inside the Bradford Labour Party. And that's the reason that Ed Miliband should come up here after the election, close down the Bradford Labour Party and start it again.
Thank you. The second question that we have is somebody who didn't want to actually articulate this question, and they've asked me to do that. It's on the Prevent agenda. And the question is this. Given that 2 young teenagers have gone to Syria from Dewsbury, and today it's been claimed that over 500 women and young girls are joining ISIS, what would you do to prevent more young people going, given that both Prevent and the counter-terrorism policies have failed? George.
What is causing this issue? I think foreign policy certainly plays its part. And I think anyone who denies that is foolish. But I don't think that that is the whole story. Boko Haram are rampaging through northern Nigeria, not because of anything that we're doing, but because of their own specific grievances. Likewise, to a lesser extent, ISIS in Syria, that situation there has evolved into the monstrosity that it is on account of non-intervention, just as Iraq descended into the monstrosity that it is because of intervention. So foreign policy is clearly only ever a part of the answer. I think it comes down to something I mentioned in my opening remarks, which is this sense of disenfranchisement and a feeling that there cannot be trust between communities. And this is what I want to come into politics. I don't care what anyone else says about me. This is why I'm standing in this constituency, to try and improve trust and respect between our communities. I think that if we can work towards greater trust between our communities and the police, that will certainly help in dealing with this issue. But most of all, there has to be greater trust amongst different communities themselves, be they white, black, brown, or any other colour. Because without that, you have this sense of disenfranchisement, this sense of grievance, this sense of anger, and a sense that they don't quite belong to Britain, in spite of the fact that our values on everything, from our shared belief in the importance of family, to the importance of education, enterprise, community itself, are fundamentally the same. So that, I think, is where we have to focus our efforts, is in promoting greater respect between different communities and taking on the bigotry and the racism that I think is making so many people so very angry.
Thank you. Naz, could I ask you, I mean, prevent and counter-terrorism policies was something that, you know, was born under the Labour government. What's your view in terms of your response to the question?
I agree with George in terms of a disenfranchisement in communities. Let me be really clear. We do have young people who are leaving the country and joining radicalised groups and fundamentalists, and that is fundamentally wrong. What we have is a bigger issue on our own home ground in terms of how we develop communities, that real grassroots involvement. If you look at statistics of young people who go into, who leave the country, they're not people, they are generally speaking, they're not people who have been conditioned over years and years. These are people who have come into religion, either reverts, converts, whichever way you want to wrap it up, and they have found an anchor because they are disillusioned. So what we need to be addressing is the root cause of that. We need to be supporting our young people to keep them, to get them involved in things, whether that's unemployment, whether that's the economic status that we're in, or a sense of belonging here. British children, British values, our cultural values are aligned to them. There is, we have shared values and we need to focus in on them. And absolutely, in terms of the prevent agenda, it is an absolute toxic brand, and we have committed to overhauling the prevent agenda if we were to come back into power.
Sorry, Naz, just at an earlier hustings that you were at, I know I will come back to the others, you did say that you actually supported prevent and had been, party to some of the monies. So are we detecting a change in your position relating to prevent?
No. I was very clear in that hustings, and there are people who are here who were at that hustings, that I delivered a project in 2009 where I was a director for a leadership development programme. In 2009, and there are colleagues amongst us who will clarify this and second me on this one, it was the first time Muslim communities were given targeted funding, and lots of organisations, not just the local government Yorkshire and Humber where I worked, delivered projects that were CLG funded, communities and local government funded. After 2009, Prevent went down the wrong route. It was absolutely the wrong route, and I do not endorse Prevent. I am very clear about that, but I did deliver a project which was one on leadership development of senior Muslim women. It was not a community grassroots intervention, which is what came in, and then we started trying to get people to start policing communities. That was wrong.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Galloway, can I ask you to respond to the question?
There we go again.
To the issue, please.
The principal reason for radicalisation, extremisation, fanaticization was personified yesterday at the top of the Labour Party's election campaign, and his name was Tony Blair. Tony Blair's invasion and occupation of Iraq is the most fantastic recruiting agent for extremism that anyone could possibly have imagined. The reason ISIS exists is because Labour's Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and George W. Bush invaded and occupied and destroyed Iraq. The reason why Al-Qaeda and ISIS are now on the outskirts of Damascus is because of Blair and Bush's invasion and destruction of Iraq. And George Grant, your Prime Minister, wanted us to become the Air Force of Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria, and the House of Commons stopped them. And one of the reasons why we did was because of my speech in Parliament before the vote, which won by 13 votes to stop David Cameron doing it. You were in Libya. David Cameron and William Hague bombed Libya to smithereens, and now Al-Qaeda are running riot and every kind of extremist organisation with its own militia, its own army, has torn Libya to pieces. So we don't need any lectures from the Conservative Party or the Labour Party on this subject. I'll tell you what I would do to stop radicalisation of British Muslims. I'd stop invading and occupying Muslim countries, and I'd stop stoking Islamophobia here at home.
Would either of you like to? Can I ask you to make your responses quick, please?
I will be very quick. I think the underlying subtext of the question is that quite clearly the Prevent agenda hasn't worked, and you could very much take a view that the Prevent agenda has actually contributed to the radicalisation that's taken place because of the stigmatisation of Muslims that's done. The only point I wanted to make is just to be, it's a little bit more complicated than just talk about disenfranchisement. One thing I noticed recently, a significant number of the people who have gone off to join ISIS are medical students. Now, I have to say, medical students aren't that disenfranchised. You know, the people who've got the opportunity to go into a pretty well-paid and pretty high-status profession, it's got to be a little bit more complicated than that, hasn't it?
Yeah, I find myself agreeing with George. We should not, Mr. Galloway, we should not be rampaging around the world, invading countries and making situations worse. The Green Party is a party of peace. It's about negotiation. It's about getting communities to understand each other, whether they're in Bradford West or on the other side of the world. One thing that I'd like to understand is why these young people feel it's necessary to board a plane and take themselves to a war zone. What are they hoping to change? And we need to get to the bottom of the people who are sending out these messages that are making our young people feel that the only choice they've got is to board a plane and cross into a country illegally. As Alun says, it's a very complicated situation. Medical students don't need to do that kind of thing. But I think we need to be looking carefully. As a mother, I would be absolutely appalled to find my children on the other side of the world entering a war zone. I'm sure lots of you would. That's my point.